Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
I'm Seth Grant with Sailrite, and in today's video we're going to show you how to do a pillow with piping and a zipper in the back. And this method works for zipper or pillows of all sizes with piping. So if you have a huge pillow and you want to have a zipper in the back and use piping, this is the video you want to watch.
In this first chapter, we'll be measuring our pillow.
For this project, we're going to be using Outdura, which is a premium indoor-outdoor fabric, and ours is has no right and wrong side, so we can cut it out on the other side. So we have our pillow form here, and this is a garnetted pillow, which means the Dacron is layered back and forth so that when you press on it, there aren't lumps in the pillow. So these are awesome pillows. They're great for indoor and outdoor applications. And we're going to measure our pillow, so we'll measure from the seam over to the seam on this side, and this is an 18-inch pillow. And one side obviously doesn't have a seam, but you just measure to the center if you're measuring that side. So 18 by 18. So this pillow is going to have a zipper that goes in the back and piping that goes around the perimeter. But because the zipper goes in the back, we don't cut our panels the exact size of the pillow.
In this chapter, we'll be cutting our plates to size.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cut one plate to have 1.5 inches more fabric, and then the other side will have 1.5 inches less. So we're going to add 1.5 inches from one and subtract 1.5 inches from other, and then add 1/2 inch to both for our zipper allowance. So first we're going to cut our larger panel, and it's going to be 18 plus 1.5 inches, so 19.5 plus 1/2 inch for our zipper. So it's going to be 20 by 18. And for our second piece, it's going to be 17 by 18. So it's minus 1.5 inches from our 18, so it's 16.5 plus 1/2 inch for our zipper.
The cut width for both panels will be the same size as our pillow, 18 inches.
And we're going to use the Sailrite Edge cordless hot knife to cut out these panels. So we'll just get going here, and this is the precision cutting foot, which is fantastic because you don't have to use a cutting glass and you can just cut out everything. So I highly recommend this foot. And the reason we're using a hot knife is to seal the fabric so that it does not unravel. We will also touch the edge of the material down here with a hot knife as well.
Coming up, we'll be sewing our plates together to install our zipper.
So we're going to make sure that our 17-inch direction panel goes the length of our 20-inch panel. So I don't want to flip this and have the 17-inch panel running across so that it's short across the width. I want to make sure that they both line up on the outsides. And if you had a fabric that had a right and wrong side, you'd want outside surfaces to be facing one another. And we're going to line these up along the edge and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. But before we do that, we're going to mark for where our zipper is going to go. When we're finished, this will be the top side of the bag of the pillow, and this will be the bottom. So if you had a pattern, you want your pattern to be up here. So we're going to mark 2 inches in from this outside edge, about 1/2 inch from the raw edge of the fabric. Okay, and we're going to do that on this side as well. Now we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew down here, and we're going to do extra reversing in these areas we marked. We're going to take some scrap and sew a little bit on it to check our tension. So I'm just going to sew a little bit, pull it out, look at our tension. Looks like our knot is up to the top, so I'm going to release tension about 1 turn. Okay, and then we're going to sew it again. Caught our trailer there. See what we got. We caught a trailer thread. And that looks good. We're going to set our stitch length to about a 4mm stitch length in both forward and in reverse. And then I'm going to put the magnetic guide on at 1/2 inch on the needle plate. And we're going to sew from one end all the way across, reinforcing up to the 2-inch line. So I'm just going to sew down here, and I'm going to reverse all the way back across, because this is an area that could take on some stress when you put the pillow form inside the cover. And we'll just sew all the way across here, making sure our panels line up. Adjust them if they don't. Then we get to the other end, past this mark, we're going to do the same thing. We'll sew to the end, then we'll sew back and do some reversing to that mark.
In this chapter, we'll be adding our zipper to our panel.
So now we're back at the table, and we're going to unfold this so that our raw seam allowances are facing up. And we're going to take our zipper, and we're going to go just up to a little bit past, actually a little bit past this 2-inch mark. So about a 1/2 inch past on each side, and that's where we will cut our zipper for size. So this is a number 2 zipper and a number 2 slider, pretty small, but it's awesome for pillows because it's practically invisible. I'm going to pull apart like the first inch, and then I'm going to feed the slider on so that it's even with both sides, and then pull it into place. And this could take a little bit. It is a small zipper, so it is a little bit harder than when you have the big guys, but you can do it. There we go. We're going to move it into the middle. So we're going to use an iron, and we're actually going to flatten this out here, but you could also place basting tape on the back side of these allowances and then baste them down. But we want to make it so that this is flat. So we're just going to iron it flat real fast here. And not all fabrics are going to iron flat. Some of them you'll probably have to actually baste, but ours should be flat enough to put the zipper on here. Now we're going to use 1/4 inch basting tape for canvas and upholstery, and we're going to put it right up against the outside edge on the side with the slider facing up down both sides of the zipper. So we got to get real close to that outside edge to make sure it doesn't show up when our project's complete. So now we're going to remove our transfer paper from both sides of the zipper. We're going to go a little bit past 2 inches, so about 1.5 inches, just like we measured for when we cut the zipper. And then I'm going to focus on where the teeth land in accordance with the seam. So I want my teeth to land directly on top of the seam, all the way down. So I'm going to actually look underneath like this and feed it all the way down carefully. If you don't do it right, you can always pull the zipper back up and do it again because we use basting tape. And there we go, right there. Looks good. I'll smooth it out. I cut 2 squares that are about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. I have 2 of them here, and I'm going to put basting tape on one side of each. I'll just show you with one, and I'll fold it in half. Then I'll put basting tape on it again. And I'm going to baste this down just right on the end of this zipper. I really want to do it at the 2-inch mark so that it lines up perfectly. So I'll take this, and this is 2 inches right here at the end of my ruler, and I'll put it down right there. Okay, and I'll do the same thing on this end over here. So I just put on the roping zipper foot left. Okay, we're going to sew. We have our needle in the center position, and we're going to sew with this side of the foot up against where the teeth of the zipper. So I'll put down my foot, and we're going to do some reversing here at the beginning. And I'm going to sew all the way down to the other end. And you can go slow with this, especially if you didn't baste down your seam allowances, because you don't want it to move around. So I'm going to hold it down with my fingers. Okay, we're coming up to the zipper slider. And I'm going to use the back end of my seam ripper, just open this up a little bit, and then I'm going to lift my foot with my needle buried, and I'm just going to push this guy all the way back so that he's on the other side. It's actually a little easier with a screwdriver. So I actually lifted up the side of my thing and moved the slider so it was facing me, the tab, and then I'll just baste this back down because then I can just push on the tab and then it'll move. So now we're past. And we'll continue sewing down the side. Up onto our stop here at the end. I'll hold it down a little bit. Okay, to about right there. Bury the needle, coming up a little bit. Lift the foot, rotate the fabric. I'm just going to fold this up a little bit here. Lower the foot. And I'm going to do a little bit of reversing over this. It's such a small slider, you don't really have to worry about hitting the teeth. And then I'm going to sew to this other side and stop the needle in a position where I'm about the same distance from the teeth as I was on the other side, so that when I lift and turn, I'm ready to sew down this side as well. Okay, lower my foot and I'll sew all the way down this side, move the slider, and then I'll show you what we do on the other side to finish. So it is easier to sew if the slider's together, so I'm going to go ahead and, with my needle buried and coming up a little bit, lift my foot and pull the slider past, just so I get the highest quality stitch possible. Lower the foot again and sew down to the end. And when I come down to this end, I'm going to sew up onto here, just like I did on the other end. And then I'll just lift my foot and sew across and do some reversing across the teeth, and I'm done. There we go. So now I have a seam ripper, and I'm going to start taking the stitches up just past where our stitch for the reinforcement was. So right here, I'll just put it in there. And I want to be careful when I'm doing this because I don't want to cut into the fabric. So just right down the center and take your time with this all the way to the other end. And then I'll stop when I get to the reinforcement on the other side. And then, as you can see right there, it opens up and you can see the zipper, and we have a finished zipper. And obviously we can slide our zipper either way.
Coming up, we'll be cutting our panel down to match the size of the pillow.
So what you should have now is a panel that's about, it looks like ours is slightly over, which doesn't matter, 36 inches long. And we're going to be cutting this panel at 18 inches. So we'll actually cut this end off right at 18 inches right here. So the reason that I put the zipper about an inch away from the piping is because if you put the piping right next to the zipper, you oftentimes end up sewing through the piping and the zipper at the same time, and it looks really crummy on the bottom. So that's why we're going to be cutting this off at 18 inches and then adding our piping. Once again, we're using the hot knife, and we're going to cut these apart, and then it'll be time to make piping. So now that we're finished, we're going to have two squares that are both 18 by 18 in both directions. So you'll see it's 18 inches this way and 18 inches this way. And you could sew these together with outside surfaces facing each other at this point, like so, and you would have a completed pillow, but we're going to add piping. If you wanted to do the corner reduction and reduce the size of the corner so it's all nice and tight, we recommend you move the zipper up. If you leave the zipper here and you do it, you're going to end up with your piping coming right up against the side of the zipper, and it oftentimes does not turn out too well. So if you follow this technique, we don't recommend doing any corner reduction. We're just going to sew the piping onto these plates and then sew it together.
In this chapter, we'll be cutting and sewing the piping.
So now we're cutting out some fabric for our piping. We want it to be 1 3/4 inches to start. And we're going to cut out 2 strips, and then we'll show you how to sew them together. We're just doing straight cut piping. You could do bias cut piping. Straight cut doesn't go around corners as well, but I don't see it as being, bias cut as being necessary for a pillow like this. So I'm going to cut out a second strip here, and then we'll show you what's next. So I have both of the strips of fabric that I cut at 1 3/4 inches, and I'm going to cut 45s on them. So I have 45 marked right here on the clear acrylic ruler. I'll just line that up with the end right there. Mark it. Mark it and then cut it out with a hot knife. Oop, we want to go all the way to the corner. And I'll cut that out with a hot knife, and I'll do the same thing with this guy right here. Now we're just going to cut it out with the hot knife. To that corner. Same thing with this guy. Now we'll take one of our panels with outside surfaces. I don't have a right side and a wrong side, but if you did, you would want outside surfaces to face each other. And we will line it up so that these corners are opposite one another, just like that. Yep, and it would form a big L. So that when you turn it right side out, your panels, your pieces are sewn together like that. Okay, I want to get these lined up again now that I'm here at the machine, and I'm going to sew from this little crevice here all the way across to the crevice on the other side. And I will do some reversing here at the beginning. So reversing there, sew across to the other side, make sure the panels are lined up, reversing there. So that when we're finished, that's what we have right there. Before you sew this, you want to make sure that the seam or the seam allowances is facing up, because if you do it this way, it's going to be backwards. And you're going to sew it like this. So you want to make sure that this side is what's facing up when you put it in the machine. And before we sew our piping, we're going to increase our stitch length to the longest stitch length and forward, and we'll do it in reverse as well. So now I have my cording, and I'm going to fold over my fabric to sandwich the cording in there. And we have a cording tunnel built into the LSZ1's standard foot. So I'll feed it in there, lower the foot, and I'm going to go closer to the end here. Make sure it's pressed in there well, and then I'm just going to sew these two together, matching up the raw edge of the fabric. And I don't need to do any reversing at the beginning because I'm probably going to be cutting that in the end. And the reason we increased our stitch length is because this is just a tacking stitch, and we'll be doing our final stitch later on. So we're coming up to our transition piece, and I'm just going to lay these flat. They're so small, it probably wouldn't matter, but it's better to lay them flat. So lay them flat and fold it as usual, and then just keep sewing. And just sew over that joint and continue all the way down to the end.
Next up, sewing the piping to one of the plates.
So we're going to put our piping on, but we want to make sure that the outside surface is facing up. Again, we don't have a wrong side and right side, so for us it doesn't matter. But we're going to put basting tape all the way around the perimeter, right up against that outside edge. And when I come to the corner, I'm just going to put my finger down and turn it, and put this all the way around the perimeter. And I'll show you what's next. We're going to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to press all this down, because this fabric is a solution-dyed acrylic, and it's resistant to pretty much everything. Peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue. And then we're just going to start by placing, we'll leave some overlap. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to put this right here, and I'm going to start basting it around the perimeter with the edges flush. So all the raw edges are on top of one another. Okay, at the corner, I'm probably going to do a little cut. And we're doing it a 1/2 inch from this outside edge right here, putting the slit. So we'll slit it there, and turn the corner. So I'm going to cut a few of these stitches just so I can get a little farther back in here. And then I'm going to cut this piping right there. So I'm going to trim this so that it's flush with the end of this piping right here. So right there. Trim that off. So we've cut this one so that it's even with this end, and then we're just going to roll this guy back, create a little tiny hem there, stick this in there, over the top like that, and we're going to sew it just like that. I'm going to put a little piece of basting tape right here, and then baste this down so that it stays in place when we take it to the machine, and I don't have to worry about it, just like that.
In this final chapter, we'll be sewing our plates together.
So here, this is our zippered panel, and we want to have outside surfaces facing each other. So outside surface up, outside surface down. And I'm going to put the zippered edge down here by where we just joined these two pieces together because that is our bottom edge. So one right on top of the other. Before we take it to the machine to sew, we're going to use some of these super grip clips and we're going to clip it in place all the way around the perimeter. This should just make it easier to hold everything in place and keep it from shifting on us. So I'll put them all the way around the perimeter. We're going to start down here at the bottom edge. We have adjusted our stitch length back to 4mm in forward and in reverse. And we have a built-in cording tunnel on the LSZ as well as the LS1. So we will just slide this under there into our cording tunnel, lower our foot, and we're going to do some reversing here at the beginning. Looks like we might catch our trailer there, so I'm just going to clear that up real fast. Nope, we're all good. And I'll just make sure that the cording, I can feel it right here, stays in the cording tunnel as we sew around the perimeter. And you can take your time with this. You want to make sure it stays in there, so.
We're using the built-in cording tunnel on the standard Ultrafeed LSZ foot, but the cording foot set for the Ultrafeed LSZ one for large welting does make the job a lot easier.
Remove the clips as you go. When we come up to this corner, I can feel the corner right here. I'm going to sew up right to this corner with and bury my needle, coming up a little bit, lift the foot, and I'm going to pivot on that location and then lower the foot and sew down this side. We're coming up on our final corner here. Same process as the others. You just sew up to the into the corner, right where that 1/2 inch is. I'll use the reverse lever to position my stitch here. Lift the foot, rotate, lower the foot, and sew. It's not going in. Coming up on the end here, and we'll do some reversing when we reach the end. So I just turned it right side out and it looks really good around most of the perimeter. I noticed this side is a little far away right here. So I'm actually going to turn it inside out again and then re-stitch this side right here all the way down the side. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with re-stitching this because as long as I'm not sewing into this cording, you're never going to see the stitch. So you just want to make sure your stitch is as close to the cording as possible. So I'll just put it back in here. Make sure it's in the tunnel. Hold my trailer. Do a little bit of reversing, and then I'm just going to re-stitch this side. So now that we're finished sewing, we're going to stuff our pillow form into our cover. And I like to just work it in a circle. I think that makes it the easiest. Pushing the corners in as you go. So this side, push it in. And then eventually you can just shove one of the corners in and get it all the way in. It's pretty easy. Okay. Now we just got to push it around so that all the corners are filled out. And we'll show you what it looks like when we're finished. To zip it up, I'm going to put my hand inside and push the pillow form down because I don't want to catch the pillow form in the zipper, and then just slide the zipper across. It's a little tight because obviously we want our pillow to be tight, and there you go. And then I'll just push the zipper down into the slot. And there you have it. A zippered pillow with piping. So here's the pillow with piping we just completed. And as you can see, we had to move the zipper up from the bottom a little bit. And that is to avoid having to sew the zipper right next to the piping, which really isn't possible. But if you want to make a pillow without piping, as you can see, this one, the zipper is directly in the bottom. And we have a link to the video with this process in the description below.
Check out the description below for a full list of the materials and tools we used to complete this project. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to be notified of when new videos become available. I'm Seth Grant. From all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.